Hello, friends. This is Christopher davis-shannon, and today we're just taking a little trip up Route 95 to get to New York City to talk with the wonderful Gwendolyn Fitz. Gwendolyn, how you doing today?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm not too shabby. I mean, it's becoming autumn now, so my fashion choices are actually appropriate for the season for the one time during the year. So this is like the magical period for me. Uh,
This is true. This is true. I noticed that you got a hat recently. So,
The funny thing about that hat is that I've in fact had it since I was 14 years old. And my brother and I have passed it back and forth, and neither of us wear it. It's almost been a long running joke about this hat. And finally, this year, I put that hat on. I was like, you know what? I kind of like it. Maybe I can be a hat guy occasionally.
yeah, I was like, wow, he must be really digging London and being over in the UK.
Yeah,
He's really growing on it.
surprisingly, not a UK find. And my brother and I were when I started wearing it. I texted. I said, "Brandon, where did this thing come from?" And we spent like an hour trying to figure it out, and we have no idea. This hat just magically appeared sometime in our teenage years in our like basement, which was our like video game area. We're like, oh, we have a hat now. So who knows the history of the hat? But I've diverted a bit from the point. We should start off. Why don't you kick us off with a tune before we get to talking too much about hats and all the good things in life?
With so many hours alone in my room, I find myself thinking, when I finally meet you, maybe I'll hear an unexpected knock and open my door and find you there with a smile. Oh, there I go again, making silly stories in my head. I should be living life instead, not getting caught up in my mind over you. Oh, there I go again, making silly stories in my head. I should be living life instead, not getting caught up in my mind over you. I'll be walking in the park on a sunny kind of blue sky day. I'll sit on a bench and open a book. I'll look over to find you smiling back at me. Oh, there I go again, making silly stories in my head. I should be living life instead, not getting caught up in my mind over you. Oh, there I go again, making silly stories in my head. I should be living life instead, not getting caught up in my mind over you. I just haven't met you yet, but I know you'll be everything I've dreamed and known, friend. I know you won't be perfect, but I expect to love you just the same, 'cause you're the one my mind made up to love. 'Cause you're the one my mind made up to love.
And that was one of Gwendolyn's original tunes. And besides being a songwriter, she is now a playwright, which has been something that has happened over the pandemic. Gwendolyn is going to be releasing, I don't know if it's the first, but one of the first ukulele musicals that will be premiering in New York on October 9th, which is very exciting. Could you just tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write a musical as a songwriter?
Well, I was just kind of sitting on my bed one day and I was kind of doing a songwriting session, and all of a sudden I this line popped in my head. It's so easy to be a murderer. And I was like, whoa, am I okay? Like, because that's a very,
Why did that pop in your head? I have some questions.
Chris, that's what I want to know. I was like, should I go talk to somebody? Because the pandemic, this has been long, but this is a bit
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
Like, but I was like, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna go with this. And so I started writing down, the first few lines to the song. I'll play it in a bit. And then I looked down at everything else that I'd written, like all the scraps and stuff, and I was like, oh, this could be a show. And so the next day I finish the book and the lyrics, and then like a week or two later, I finished the music for the show.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's some fast writing.
Well, again, it was pandemic. I had nothing else to do.
So true. That has been one of the positive aspects of the pandemic is getting out all those creative ideas that we never have time for.
Yeah. And well, this time last year, I actually wrote the first. It was a murder mystery. I'd always wanted to write a murder mystery musical, and I had written it, and we performed it. It was just like 6 ukulele songs, and it was more book than music. And then this just kind of popped in, and it was just all music and very little book. So I was like, okay, I'm happy with this.
Again, could you give the folks just like a brief synopsis of the musical so they know what they're getting into?
Sure. So Ease of Murder, it's set in the 1920s, which, if you didn't know, was more of like the pinnacle of when the ukulele was around and when it was really popular. So it's set in the Roaring 20s. A mob man or hitman for a mob is sent to a party to take out his next victim, but then he ends up falling in love with the victim's daughter. And she is not what she seems to be, you find out in the show.
Ooh, exciting. Twists and turns. So to ask you, because you've been a songwriter for years, and what challenges do you see in writing a musical straight through as opposed to just writing songs? Because they have a lot of similarities, but I'm sure there's some obstacles that you probably had not encountered before that you had to deal with in writing this musical.
I think the only thing was just plot. Like, how is this going to end? Was something that took me a little bit of time to figure out, because, with a song, it's just one little story, boom, and then you're done. But in college, I actually did a lot of theater, and surprisingly, I actually thought before I did songwriting and picked up the ukulele that I was going to do Broadway and musicals. And so I directed a bunch of theater in Austin before I moved to New York. So It was kind of something that I always played with, but I just kind of put it away when I started learning the ukulele, and it just kind of taken on.
Is that part of why you moved to New York, was to be closer to the Broadway scene and the theater scene in general?
Yeah, I did. But then, with the ukulele, it's a lot easier, because the thing about shows, if you're not in one, then what do you do? Like, there's nothing to do. Yeah. It's you don't have any work. So I just decided to be a musician instead, and it's like, this is going to happen.
You might have been a musician before that, whether you liked it or not.
It's true. I was, but I was more of like, because I majored in flute and voice, but then I forced myself to do theater because I was terrified of performing. And I was like, okay, I got to get over this. And I took a theater class, and then I ended up liking it a lot. And yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of you being a major in flute and voice and not ukulele, not that many of us majored in ukulele in this world. You actually have a book out called Vocalele. A book of vocal warm-up exercises for ukulele players, which I think is something very much needed in this world. Would you mind telling us a little bit about this book that you wrote?
Oh, yeah. It's been a while. Wow, almost a little over a year since I wrote that. So it kind of goes over the proper vocal placement for your mouth to kind of just be on pitch, and gives you a little bit more tips on how to match your voice to the notes that you're trying to play on the ukulele. And it's just, good habits and good vocal technique instead of trying to approach singing without kind of any training. I know that can be a little bit hard to do with the ukulele.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people in the uke scene are very intimidated by adding vocals to their songs. And I always stress to my students that everyone has a voice and can sing. It's a matter of figuring out how to use it. And learning an instrument, it's still learning an instrument, even though it's one we were born with and have had access to our whole lives. That doesn't mean that we've utilized it as and really thought about the mechanics of it.
It's so true. And a lot of people just automatically think that they're tone deaf. And it's like, if you were tone deaf, you wouldn't be able to play an instrument at all. Like that's
Yeah, I was talking to one of my students about that a few weeks ago. Because I think it's something like 1% of the population is really tone deaf. It's very, very, very rare. It's more a matter of most people haven't taken any time to train their ears or their vocal cords to be able to do or hear what they need.
Yeah, and it's all just matching pitch. If you've never had any vocal training, it's just all trying to figure out plucking one note and then just sitting down and trying to match pitch, which can be a long time. It's not like instant gratification, which I totally get. It's why people.
And I'll tell you, because I've been an instrumentalist my whole life, and my singing has only come really in the past 5 to 7 years or so. Although I've been playing instruments for, gosh. Yeah, I don't want to say how long anymore because I got old.
Tell us, Chris.
It's 25 years or so. Been playing instrument actually longer than that. Oh my gosh, never mind. But when I started singing, I had decided that I wanted to do some singer-songwriter stuff and all that. And I should note that my mother is a professional vocalist, and my brother also did theater and is a wonderful vocalist, but I never really sang that much. And I did not feel comfortable with my voice for at least a year when I was singing. And, no one does, I think. Like, we all think our voices sound weird and we can't get them to do what we want. And that's frustrating because it's part of our body. But if you work at it and just like practicing an instrument, that muscle memory and everything gets there, but it's a process. And people like yourself that also teach voice, but with this side of ukulele is a really wonderful thing, I think, for a lot of players, because we don't have a lot of things really focused on that in the ukulele world. It's like, just sing the song and it'll be fine. And it's not always.
Yeah, and that first year, it took me a while to become comfortable with my voice, but I also think it took me a little bit more time because in college they were having me do more classical songs, and I'm not I don't have enough lung power.
It's a different mindset, certainly.
Yeah, and everybody has their own voice for something very specific, and it's more of I've always wanted to just sing jazz style songs, and that works with my voice, surprisingly.
Yeah, and same here. I'm not going to be singing any arias anytime ever is the answer to that.
I mean, come on, Chris. Let's just give it a try.
Give me 10 years and we'll talk about that after I take some vocal lessons from you. So I'm going to post a link to the Vocalele book in the description here, so you all can check that out, because it's really a wonderful thing that I think a lot of people just getting in the mindset and have some tools to start singing if it seems intimidating to you is important. But would you mind playing us one of the tunes from Ease of a Murder?
It's so easy to be a murderer. It's so easy to be a KILLER, Boston paper petty crime. But for the big time, 'cause I know it's easy to get away with murder. It's so easy to take someone out, not on a date I mean, but take their lights out, just a knock on the head and then they're dead. It's so easy to get away with murder. So you're not the violent type, you don't really get the hype, you'd rather a large party type, rather slip poison in the drink, so no one suspects you for a thing. Oh, it's so easy to get away with murder. So you knock on the door and you're let right in, and the killing can begin. Just gotta find the man, my boss is damned, and then, well, the job's done. It's so easy to get away with murder.
Now changing gears a little bit, we're going to step away from musical theater, because as I mentioned earlier, Gwendolyn is also a singer-songwriter. And she released last year her first official single called Painter. And I want to talk to you a little bit about just the process of taking a song from a notebook to being released on every digital platform, because there's so much in between there. And I think sometimes people don't understand how much really goes into just recording a single. Can be a lot. So with Painter, can you walk us through the process of taking it from just words on a page and some chords on the uke to what we hear now?
Absolutely. So Painter it took about 4 years to actually get it recorded. And so first there was kind of this music part, because I used to play it with the most god-awful chucking sound.
You know how I feel about you.
And it was just like it just felt like I was just slapping my ukulele all around. But then I also kind of had the same progression going the whole time. So I knew when it was done that it needed some work in that area. And I finally, last year, I interviewed someone on my show, her song, Her Voice, Her Story. And we were talking afterwards, and she turned to her partner and she was like, "Oh, my partner and we have a home studio. You should come and he can produce your song." So I was like, all right. And so I came over there, and, we had a pre-production meeting, and he was like, "Yeah, we need to get rid of this chucking thing."
Yeah. Let's talk about pre-production for a second, because I feel like that's the step that a lot of people don't even know exists, and sometimes doesn't happen at all, which is detrimental. So what is pre-production when we're writing, recording a song?
Pre-production is a couple of things. So the first kind of pre-production meeting we had was just to get a basis of, okay, so going into this, we're going to make these changes, and we want to get what you kind of want to sound like. So you send them a few links of songs that you want the song to sound a bit like. And then the first kind of few weeks that you go over a pre-production where you map out the song, and all the instrument parts that you want to use. So for this one, I actually, for the chucking, they actually wanted to do a picking pattern for this, which I had tried to record Painter a little bit earlier, before a few years, and the guy wanted to change the entire song, and I was like, "No, I want to make it jazz." And the guy was like, "You're weird." And I was like, "I don't like you. Bye."
And that's an important lesson in, you don't have to work with someone just because they're there. Sometimes it just doesn't work. You got to find the right people to record your music too. I know I have two specific studios that I go to all the time, and it's not because they're the best in the world. It's because I like the people and working with them, and that's very important.
Yeah, that's really important. And the guy happened to be, this producer, Omer Berger. He happened to be a jazz guitarist. He studied jazz in college. So when I said right away, I want to make this a jazz and pop fusion together, he was like, "Oh, okay, I get it now." And so, he was like, "Oh yeah, so we'll just, take it to a nice swing, style of playing." And and so then we brought in all the instruments that we wanted, flutes, and I let a guitar be in this song. And then
it's okay to let guitars be in ukulele songs. It's okay.
Yeah, whatever. They're stupid, but they work sometimes. No. He did a fantastic solo part, and that was something in pre-production that I was like, okay, this bridge part, when I'm doing a little scat with my voice, I just want all the instruments to go off. And so he was like, okay, let's reel this in a little bit. But yeah, I'm just one of those. Yeah.
We're talking about pre-production. I think of it as sort of for people that write, you come in the studio with a first draft. And you think about the first draft of writing, it gets changed significantly. And one of the big things that go in a studio is having that outside input into your creative process.
Yeah.
It can be a tough feeling the first couple times to have other people have input on something you've created.
Yeah. And I think it's important to keep that overall image that you've wanted, but to be open to ideas. Because I knew that my song wasn't perfect by any means. Like it wasn't, ready to go. But that really helped to just keep an open mind. And then, because some people can be very defensive about their work and you're like, it's not perfect. Like what?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's a tough pill. It's a nice humble pill to swallow sometimes, to remember that like you're not perfect and everything that you do is imperfect.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I
And
step
also,
back and tell myself that.
yeah, and someone like a producer is very, very intricate into the details. Like I don't know if you heard it, but we actually have a melodica in there.
Is that really?
Um, yeah, and it's
Which
during
every
the
song should have. Let's be clear about that.
every song should have a melodica. Basically, if it doesn't have a melodica, it sucks. A melodica and a ukulele, it's not any good.
Agreed.
Don't
Absolutely agreed.
start over. Yeah, it's holding the bridge where I'm scatting. He's like, okay, you want to have all the instruments going off, but you need to have something that keeps them together.
Some
And
stability,
so,
yeah.
yeah, and so I have the ukulele still doing its own thing, but we put in a melodica behind the scenes to kind of just hold a little bit better.
And little things like that, like a pad sound, can make all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
And you say, that's the thing that producers bring to the table, is those little ideas that maybe you would never even think about, because
Yeah.
they're more or less people who are really entrenched in that world are listening for certain things and know how to create different sonic palettes, where we're just instrumentalists and songwriters that do what we do,
Yeah. And for that melodica part, I want to bring in that he did the whole thing in one breath. We both went back and forth, and I couldn't do it. I tried,
Would you
and I
like
was
to
actually
feel
really
the
surprised.
breathing with a melodica?
Yeah, like, and he was there. He like ended up sitting Indian style with the melodica like this, and he was like, and he just took one big breath and he was like, all right, we're doing this. And he got it in, and he was so red afterwards, but it was great. It was like, we got it, we win.
And lesson learned, every song needs a melodica. If you have a ukulele, complement it with a melodica. They go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So once we get out pre-production, when you decide what you're doing and all of that, then it comes to actually tracking. So you can talk to a little bit about that, the actual recording process of getting the song to tape or to digital hard drives, as it were.
That first day, I thought I was going to die because I've never done that before. It was just 6 hours of all ukulele that I had to do, just so many takes.
The horror.
Or, and it was more of, I was just doing the same chords over and over again. And you have to keep focused because you don't have any singing or anything like helping you out here. You just have to think, and you're just with the metronome. And I was like passing out a little bit, and finally, I was like, are we done? Do we get everything? He's like, let me just listen to this one more time. And I was like, if I hide, I won't have to do this again.
Right. Well, the hard part I've always found in the studio is saying good enough, especially with instrumental parts. Like, you've done it enough times, it's not getting any better. We need to let it, like, no one is perfect. And that's the unfortunate reality, as much as we want to be.
Yeah, and I think he could tell that I was really nervous because he had to give me a little bit of a pep talk before we started. He was like, it's all good. All this stuff is going to be pretty much edited together, so we're just going to get as many takes as we can. It's all good. And I was like, okay, but I was still like,
yeah. And the joy of that new studio magic, where you do 10 passes on a tune, and then they do comps to, you get the good parts of each one, because not one is ever going to be 100%. And it's
I think that's probably a big reason why I don't record in my own apartment, because I'm just like, it has to be perfect all together.
Yeah, and I also find I do a fair amount of recording myself for other people at my apartment. I record bass for people mostly, and it's it's hard to be your own critic, as you're talking about having a producer to be like, hey, maybe you should do that take again, or hey, maybe you should change this one little line, and just being on your own trying to record things. Where's the point where you go, okay, I'm going to go nuts if I hit record one more time.
Yeah, and that whole first day of just ukulele, that was the only long day in the studio. Everything else kind of, hey Charlie, what's up? Everything else just kind of was pretty quick. We did a lot. All the vocals are their own takes. Nothing was copy and pasted.
Yeah.
So it was there. I think there's a few harmonies, but then there's a bunch of me singing. I think there's 6 of me singing the melody at one point on the oh painter part.
Yeah.
So all of that was done, no copy and pasting. So that took a little bit of time. And then the flute part, I think that was what I was most nervous about, because I haven't really played the flute in a while. So coming back to that, I was like, yeah, I'm going to suck.
And this is supposed to be my primary instrument. No.
Yeah. But he wrote a really gorgeous, in pre-production, because the turnaround was so fast. I just didn't have the time to do it, but he just sat down and he was like, all right, I can write this flute part out. And that, I think I really wanted one, because I think it's so gorgeous in the old jazz songs whenever there's a flute part in there. So I was like, I have to have flute.
Yeah, and it's such a rarity too. You see some of those early recordings where there were some more odd instruments used throughout, but it is a very specific sound. Yeah.
But it didn't go good with the melodica, so that's why melodica is only on the bridge.
That's fair. So what you got? Did you bring other musicians in as well, or is it just you as a producer doing the majority?
I did have my good friend Jeff Rosny. He came in and played upright bass for me.
Nice.
And he did that really cool slide in there. On the song.
Everyone, please use upright bass on your ukulele recordings. I just don't believe in electric. It's not real. I'm talking to everyone in the world right now. Electric bass is not real.
It isn't, except if you have a U bass. I have a U bass.
That's true. U basses are a lot of fun. I would take a U bass over like a Fender P bass with ukulele. I think they get pretty darn close to that upright sound.
I would say, I would personally use upright, but I think we all know that I'm just a little too short to do it. I just,
There's no such thing. Anyone can.
I'd have to stand on a chair or something.
Yeah. Don't worry, they make half-size basses. You'll be fine.
Do they really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. They make down to 16th size. Like you could start a 5th grader on upright bass on a tiny one.
So do you think I'd be able to do a 5th grader?
Oh yeah. You would be surprised that you can probably play a standard size upright bass.
Okay.
I went to college with someone who was just under 5 foot and played up.
Oh, yeah, I'm 5 feet exactly.
And played a 3/4 size, which is standard size upright bass, and she was a monster. So good. But she'd be like reaching up like this to get things. Yeah. But then the line she played, like I can never do that. I don't know how it's so. Don't count it out. You can do it. Anything's possible. So we get upright bass. So upright bass is the only other instrumentalist that you brought in for the recording. Yeah. So you get everything recorded, and then what happens?
And then what happens? And then you wait a long time. Well, for me, it was. I would have released it a little bit sooner, but the music video wasn't done. You have to, the whole package. Yeah,
which I mean, if you think about, is something that's necessary these days. You can't release without some kind of video content.
Yeah, and it just got too cold outside to film anything. Because I filmed the part where we did the photo shoot where my friends threw paint on me. We did that around the same time where we started pre-production of Painter, because I'm ahead of the times kind of person.
Yeah.
So, and I had this idea for what I wanted the music video to be for years. So it's just, gathering the stuff and doing it. And, that took, we finished the rest of the music video in May. And so I just had about a month to kind of put everything else together and try to do like a social media, marketing
Yeah,
thing.
and getting promotion as a song is only as successful as its marketing team. Unfortunately, you can't just release a song and expect it to do something.
And this is why Painter, and I'm not famous because, this is me marketing, just me marketing.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's tough, being an independent artist and doing everything yourself or within the budgets that you have yourself, which are generally small for independent artists, is hard. But but you mentioned social media marketing, and that's one of those powerful tools that we didn't have 15 years ago, really, even to promote new releases. And organic reach on social media can be integral to marketing campaigns these days.
And I hate it so much, but I don't know what I'd do without it.
Same here.
It's just, Instagram is so frustrating sometimes. I won't even get into that. Just like.
Yes, I fully understand. There's so many to keep up with as well. That's the other thing. It's not one social media platform. It's 5 or 6 that you need to be active on and create new content for each of them. And it is very much a full-time job.
Yeah.
That's with the recording, why I love talking about the process of doing it, because it's not walk into a studio one day, play into a microphone, and release the next day. I mean, it can be that, but generally, that's not the reality that we work with. It's a long process to record even one tune. Yeah,
definitely. I think that is a huge confusion over like musicians that don't know anything. They just go in and they're like, oh, okay, I'm just going to play this and then I'm done and then I can pass it out and everybody's going to love it. And it's like, no, it needs a little bit more than that.
Yeah, and there's certainly a time and place for like those one take things.
Yeah.
And I have certainly done sessions like that before, and they have their own charm to it because it's raw and because it's unedited. But for a pop tune, that ain't going to fly. People, we were talking on the break actually about home studios and recording at home a little bit, and I think that's sort of the detriment. I love that recording at home is so easy, but it's also so easy to just never do pre-production and just here's a song, we're done, it's out there in the world. And I think that's a little line that you always have to be careful of the convenience of recording your own stuff and getting more product out there, but also being, still have artistic integrity.
Yeah, that's really hard because I've started mapping out songs on recording and doing the pre-production thing, but then I'm just like, oh, I'm actually recording. This doesn't sound too bad. I could keep it this way, and I'm like, no, wait, no, can't cheat.
Right, and because you write more pop influenced music, like having a good hook, all of those things are really important pieces of the puzzle, and they take time usually to get to. I keep my notebook and I'm always like, when I write songs, I'm doing outlines for instrumentation and all these different things throughout so that I remember the ideas and then, try to execute them.
Yeah, because I think the hard part for me is that I just don't play enough instruments. Like, I just want to play all the instruments.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I have this idea for just like kind of big band jazz that mixes in with the pop, but I just don't have all of those horns, at my disposal.
Yeah, and hiring an entire horn section is very pricey, let me tell you.
And then it's like, I don't know.
And then orchestrating for it on top of that, right? That's the other piece of the puzzle. Is even if you could play all the instruments, you still got to orchestrate for all those instruments.
This is very true.
There's a lot going on. So with all this said about how Painter came to be, let's hear Painter.
What's gonna happen of memories to take aside and close my eyes. In the end, I'll painter, painter, spin my story with your brush. I'll painter, painter, spin my story with your brush. Painter, painter, please be kind with your canvas, 'cause I don't run away alone. Please make my dreams come true and ease my mind so I can get some sleep tonight. Oh, painter, painter, spin my story with your brush. Oh, painter, painter, spin my story with your brush. Oh, painter, painter, spin my story with your. Oh, painter, painter, spin my story with your brush.
And that was Painter, Painter by Gwendolyn Fitz. And I'm going to link below in the description words that I can say, so that you can hear the fully produced version of the song that we were just talking about. So Gwendolyn, thank you so much for joining me. And I wish you the best of luck with the musical, which is coming up next weekend as people are listening to this. So please, if you're in the New York area, do go check that out. So again, thank you so much for joining me, Gwendolyn.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, it's been a pleasure talking to you. And as always, would you mind just playing us a little bit of a tune to get us out of here?
Sure.